Sandy Alcantara didn't get traded at the trade deadline. Could he get moved this offseason? And could the Boston Red Sox be a good fit for him?
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to today's crossover episode of Locked On Marlins and Locked On Red Sox. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian from Locked On Red Sox, here with Jeremiah Geiger from Locked On Marlins. And we are here to talk a lot about offseason stuff because it's that time of year now where you start to kind of speculate players that could be moved and teams that could be a fit for certain players. And at the trade deadline, there were certain players that the Marlins have that the Red Sox expressed interest in. So we're going to be talking all about that on this show, as well as offseason needs for both teams and way too early predictions for 2026. So I'm excited to dive into all of that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. So I've talked about extensively on my show kind of where the Red Sox are at now and where they need to be going into 2026. And I am happy to be doing an episode with somebody who could have some ideas on things and players that could help the Red Sox. Jeremiah, how are you doing, first of all?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited to do this crossover episode, especially, with yourself, the Boston Red Sox Locked On host. Marlins fans and Red Sox fans, we don't usually connect a lot, in opposite divisions, opposite leagues, but it's going to be a fun episode. There's a lot to talk about. Two very exciting teams, Red Sox coming off of the postseason and the Marlins with a 17-game win improvement and a lot of good players on both sides that we can dive into.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because you look at the teams that are in the World Series right now, which, by the way, you could imagine that this is a nightmare World Series scenario for somebody like me, because I'm either rooting for a division rival or rooting for a team that just won the World Series last year that literally nobody wants to see win the World Series again and could, cause a lockout in Major League Baseball if they do win it again. So definitely I'm torn on that. But what I will say about both of those teams is those teams have championship rosters. And when I look at where the Red Sox and Marlins are at right now, they're just not quite at that same level as you feel like where the Blue Jays and Dodgers are at right now. And that does have to do with the fact that both teams have a lot of young talent and players that are developing and kind of finding their stride within Major League Baseball. And I think that's a really exciting thing for both of these teams is they definitely both have a bright future and you can kind of see things moving in a positive direction, I would say.
Oh, for sure. I think this offseason is going to be crucial for the Marlins, also for the Red Sox, in terms of setting yourself up for success in 2026, because that's ultimately what the offseason's about. As fans, as podcasters, once the season ends, we can breathe a little bit. Unfortunately, we never want the season to end. We wish our teams are playing in the Fall Classic. But the front offices, they're going to work. They're scouting. They're looking at, potential free agent signings, potential trades, which I'm sure we'll get into later on in the show. But yeah, it's an exciting time because we can speculate and we can give our own ideas about really what our teams should do to make the postseason for the Red Sox again in 26 and for the Marlins to get back there for the first time since 2023.
Yeah, and both of these teams are in very talented divisions. So the pressure's kind of on to, continue to build these rosters to be in that spot because it's not easy playing in either one of our divisions. And you look at who some of those opponents are that we have to play multiple times a season. It's not an easy feat. And one of the biggest things I will say that surprised me about the Marlins at the trade deadline this year was the lack of players that were actually moved. Sandy Alcantara being the main one to me that I thought for sure was going to be a player that was going to be moved, an experienced veteran who could have benefited a playoff team down the stretch. And the Red Sox had expressed interest in him at the time. So I'm curious to know your thoughts on maybe why the Marlins decided not to move him at the trade deadline.
Yeah, so going into last season, opening day, Sandy was healthy, coming off of Tommy John surgery. He was making his much anticipated return. I mean, he is beloved here. Everybody loves him. And then things just went south. He could not figure it out. He was getting hit hard. He had no control, and everybody's freaking out. What's going on with Sandy? Why doesn't he look like the Sandy Alcantara of old? And that's to me is why the Marlins didn't move him at the trade deadline, was because the value had diminished. And when if you're Peter Bendix, the Marlins president of baseball operations, you didn't want to sell low on your assets. You still had Sandy for another year of control. And you couple that with the fact that the Marlins were playing really good baseball at that time, from about early to mid-June through the trade deadline. The Marlins were a top 5 team in baseball, right up with the Milwaukee Brewers in terms of record. So once they got to the trade deadline, they were hovering around 500. They thought, look, Sandy's not pitching well. We still think he can bounce back, but we're technically in the running for a wild card. Why not hold him, see if we can make a run at this thing, and then reevaluate in the offseason? That's what I think they're going to do.
Yeah, and it's totally understandable because at the trade deadline, it's hard for these teams sometimes to really know what the direction they should go in, whether they trust the team that they have to try to make a playoff run and try to capitalize on that, or do they sell some of their assets and try to focus on next year and beyond because they don't feel like they can make a deep run. And if you're one of those teams that's kind of on the cusp, sometimes it's hard to make that distinction and it isn't always clear. But the Red Sox definitely need starting pitching. They have Garrett Crochet, who was no doubt the ace of the rotation all season long, definitely gave the Red Sox everything that they needed. And Craig Breslow, who's the Red Sox president of baseball operations, has shown that he's willing to make big trades. I mean, everybody is familiar with the fact that he traded away Rafael Devers a couple months into the season this year. So that's a huge statement that he made of saying, I'm not afraid to move somebody if it's for the betterment of this Boston Red Sox team down the road. And when he traded for Garrett Crochet last offseason, he moved some big time prospects that probably are going to find success. But you do that trade every single day because you needed that number one starting pitcher. But now they do need more starting pitching to fill in behind him to make their rotation more stable and reliable in 2026 and beyond, because they're kind of going into it right now with some question marks. And Sandy could once again be a fit for Boston. Do you think it's realistic that, maybe those two teams get in conversation this offseason? Do you think the Marlins do consider moving him now in the winter?
As much as it pains me to say that, because I've been very vocal on my show, I don't want the Marlins to trade Sandy or Edward Cabrera. I think it's a very realistic possibility that they do. We saw that last offseason when the Marlins traded Jesus Luzardo to the Philadelphia Phillies, a division rival nonetheless. They traded Jake Berger. So Peter Bendix has shown that he will make moves. He will make trades in the offseason. And when I look at the Red Sox fit, I mean, you said it perfectly. You had Garrett Crochet, who, I mean, literally could not have been better for that team. It probably wins the Cy Young in any other year that Tarek Skubal doesn't exist. But getting another pitcher for the Red Sox is huge. Another, veteran starter. The Marlins have that in Sandy Alcantara. How it looks for like finances, because the Marlins and finances, they've been at war with each other for years. And I'm still hesitant to trust that Bruce Sherman will commit financially to players. They're going to have to eventually. Sandy's making $17 million this upcoming season with a club option for $21 million, I believe it is. So this is the last year of total team control. He could be on the table for various teams. The Red Sox could definitely be one of them. It just depends on what direction the Marlins want to take. If they want to continue rebuilding, or as I want them to do, start building and start adding pieces.
Yeah, and that's where you get into this interesting kind of middle ground that I was just talking about of not really knowing what direction your team is going to go in. And it feels obvious with where the Red Sox are at right now that they need to continue to build on what we just saw from them in 2025. A team that made the playoffs with a young roster. You've got to go out and make moves to improve that roster. And that starts with the starting pitching. And the Red Sox have said over the last few seasons that they are hesitant to trade for pitchers that don't have a lot of team control. They want to be able to have pitchers who do. So that's something that I could see them being a little bit hesitant about when it comes to Sandy and the reservation there is, we could trade for him and then he might not be here for very long. And so it really would come down to what kind of package the Marlins would be looking for him. And coming up, we're going to be talking about exactly that. If these teams were to make a trade, what needs do both of these teams have that could make a trade work? The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I personally love FanDuel because it's a great way to make money and bet on all kinds of different sports. And if you enjoy watching different sports, that can be you too. So I highly recommend FanDuel. And it's very simple how you can get involved with FanDuel today. All you have to do is just visit FanDuel.com to download the app today and get started. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress, I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Visit rugiet.com/LockedOnMLB to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnMLB. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnMLB so they know that we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. So we are at the point in the offseason now where a lot of people are starting to get antsy because people want to know what kinds of moves their teams are going to be making, myself included. I'm sitting here like I can speculate as much as I want, but I just want moves to start happening so this World Series could end so that we can start talking about what is actually happening as opposed to what could happen. But we look at two teams that feel like they're in a relatively similar spot in terms of having young rosters that aren't quite at the top of the top yet, but could work towards that. And the Red Sox have very specific needs this offseason. Those needs include starting pitching and also primarily another power bat that's somebody who's more of a home run threat because the Red Sox didn't hit a lot of home runs in 2025. That's something that kind of held them back relative to other teams. So they're going to need to find somebody who can be a reliable power bat and can provide some of that they don't necessarily get from a lot of their other hitters. A true replacement for Rafael Devers, which was something I thought they were also going to get at the trade deadline, and they didn't really get that. So now I'm sitting here wondering if that's something they're going to do this offseason. And the Marlins definitely have their specific needs this offseason. So what would you say are their biggest needs when it comes to this offseason and the holes in their roster that they need to fill if they really are trying to build a contending team?
Yeah, the biggest need is first base. And I just did a show I've done a couple shows actually this offseason about potential free agent targets because that's what one of the main, I guess, offensive black holes was this entire season. They got no power. They rotated a few guys at the position. Eric Wagaman got over 500 plate appearances and hit just 9 homers. He got hot for a stretch there in August, September, but overall, I I don't look at Eric Wagman as being the long-term answer. I don't think anybody should. Troy Johnston was a long-time prospect, made his debut finally, and I'm happy for him. It's a great story, but is he, again, the long-term answer? No. So then where do you go? Because there's nobody coming up through the system that fits the bill. There's nobody in the system that's close to, being an everyday player. So I look at the Marlins in first base, getting a power hitting first baseman is a need. And then third base is an interesting situation because Connor Norby, who was in the Baltimore Orioles organization, was traded from Baltimore along with Kyle Stowers for Trevor Rogers in 2024's trade deadline. He's underperformed, and he's not a good defender at third base. He's dealt with injuries, not really impressed offensively either. So third base is interesting because I guess the story around Miami media is that they're going to give a competition between Connor Norby and Graham Pauley, who's an excellent third baseman, but there's still some questions offensively with him. So would I want to see this team go out and sign Eugenio Suarez? I mean, that would be exciting, right? But I don't think they're going to do that. I think the main thing they're focused on is addressing first base and then, of course, the bullpen, because you can never have enough arms. The Marlins have actually been linked to Devin Williams, the former Brewers closer turned Yankees closer turned Yankees setup man. Who knows what he's going to be in Miami? But I think that's really what it comes down to, getting a power hitter at first and then addressing the bullpen, because I think the rotation is in a pretty solid spot.
Yeah, 100%. And that's one of the things that the Red Sox had as a strength in 2025 was their bullpen was statistically the best in the American League. So that was one of their biggest strengths in 2025. And I don't see that necessarily changing in 2026. I do see them wanting to retain a lot of these relievers. I mean, Aroldis Chapman came out of nowhere and was arguably the best closer in baseball this year, and nobody saw that coming. And they extended him for 2026. So he's here to stay for another year. So we'll see if he has the same type of performances as he had in 2025 or not. But the Red Sox bullpen was definitely very solid. And when it comes to the infield right now, it's an interesting situation because Triston Casas is technically the Red Sox first baseman, but he faced a season-ending injury in early May this year. So then they kind of had to figure out their first base situation. They were platooning a couple guys in that position for a lot of the season. And they're now at the point where they need to make a decision on, do they see Triston Casas as the first baseman of the future or not? There's a ton of upside with him, had a fantastic rookie season. And when he's at his best, he's very, very good. But the problem is, do the Red Sox trust that he can be that guy moving forward? Or do they want to upgrade that position, which I personally would like to see them upgrade that position and go after a guy like Pete Alonso this offseason is where I'm at on that. But that leaves for an interesting dilemma of they could make Triston Casas potentially a trade piece for a team that's still young and is still trying to mold themselves into a contender, and maybe they're trying to find somebody who could be a longer term piece. So that's all dependent on if the Red Sox want to keep him around or if they feel like they want to try to go for a first baseman who maybe has been healthier as of late that they feel could contribute. And then maybe they do decide to move Casas. So that's an interesting and intriguing situation, since you did bring up that the Marlins need a first baseman this offseason.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Casas, because I remember when Casas was healthy, there were some Marlins fans, I mean, I can go through the receipts on Twitter, that said, look, Casas as a trade partner coming to Miami, we still needed a first baseman, and then he got injured. So there's a question mark there with his return, especially just kind of declining after that first season with the Red Sox. But that kind of fits the Marlins mold of establishing a young core, and to see if Casas, maybe a change of scenery helps him. He's fully healthy. I'd be interested to see a package that the Red Sox would offer the Marlins if they make Sandy available that has Casas in it, because he's controllable. He's going to be here for the next few years. And like you said, the upside is so huge with him. It's just if he can meet that upside. It's an interesting question because if you asked me this, I would say after last season, in the 2024 offseason, I would say, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Now I wonder if the Marlins are more geared toward addressing the position, like you said, with the Red Sox in free agency and seeking that veteran rather than that young, not prospect, but fresh out of prospect status.
Yeah, and there could be a world in which that type of deal works out if Triston Casas were to be one of the primary pieces in that deal. The other thing that the Red Sox do have going for them is that they have a lot of young talent, both in the farm system and in the outfield right now. They just have an overcrowded outfield, and they're going to need to trade somebody. They just can't get everybody in. And it's a good problem to have, but they had one of the best defensive outfields in baseball too. And because of the fact that they're going to need to move somebody, I'm inclined to feel like the Marlins may be down for that if the Red Sox were to say, we'll give you Triston Casas and one of our young controllable outfielders if you give us one of those starting pitchers. Because you also mentioned Cabrera, who we haven't talked about as much, who could potentially be another option in a trade. And I could see there being a world in which maybe something like that has worked out. And then I feel like it's helping both teams because the Marlins are getting a couple really good young pieces in return. And the Red Sox are getting something they desperately need, which is reliable starting pitching. So
Right.
would you say that Cabrera maybe would be a more reliable option than Sandy based on where they are both at right now and how they looked in 2025?
I think in terms of control, if the Red Sox want a pitcher who has 3 more years of additional team control and who's very cheap, then you go with Cabrera. I mean, the price tag between Sandy and Cabrera, it's not even in the same stratosphere. Cabrera's coming off of a career season. Nobody saw it coming. He was a former top prospect with the Marlins, but had struggled for years in terms of control. He could not avoid walking batters. And then all of a sudden, everything clicked. He's throwing a 96-mile-an-hour changeup, and he's the best pitcher, the most consistent pitcher on the staff over 2026 or 2025. Heading into 2026, the question is, number one, is he healthy? Because there was a time in September in which he went on the IL with an elbow sprain. And the question is he going to need Tommy John surgery? And then all of a sudden you start seeing he's throwing again. The Marlins could see him getting back. And I'm like, what is going on here? Is he healthy? Because if he's not healthy, then why are we throwing him and trying to rush him back in a season that we're not going to make the playoffs? Anyway, he comes back. I think he started 1 or 2 games. And then the question is, all right, well, now what? I guess just wait until spring training to see, get in the weight room, strengthen the elbow, whatever you can do. Because if the Marlins keep him, then he's right up there with the big 3. I call them the big 3. You have Sandy, you have Edward Cabrera, and you have Yuri Perez, who's untouchable. Cabrera and Sandy are the 2 most attractive trade chips that the Marlins have, without a doubt. So any package I think that Peter Bendix wants to get, I want to see also is young, controllable talent and major league ready talent. I think we're past the part of getting a low A or high A player with upside. We want guys that can slot in and play now. So like you said, the Red Sox have that to offer, which makes this just so fascinating.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if these 2 teams at least get in contact this
Absolutely.
offseason because the Red Sox definitely have a lot of young, controllable talent that they don't really know what to do with at this point. It starts with the outfield that they currently have, but they do also have a couple other really strong prospects that are on the verge or have gotten a taste of the majors already because the Red Sox had a ton of injuries in 2025. So guys just kept getting called up and have gotten a taste of what playing at the major league level is like. So I feel like the Red Sox could really help the Marlins in terms of getting them young, exciting talent that they could use as part of that core as they continue to develop. And with the Red Sox, it's just a matter of, do they want to take that chance on one of those pitchers and hope that that pitcher will stay healthy and give them what they need from a reliability standpoint? Because they really need a true number 2 starter, somebody who can slot in behind Garrett Crochet as that number 2. And the question would be, do the Red Sox feel like they can rely on one of those guys to slot into that role? And if the answer to that is yes, then I think a trade like this makes a lot of sense for both teams.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those off seasons where the World Series starts on Friday, and once that ends, we're going to go on MLB trade rumors. We're going to go on MLB.com, and we're going to start seeing the rumors and the podcasts like we're doing now talk about these potential matchups, because I love the Red Sox farm system. I mean, that was one of the farm systems I highlighted at the trade deadline. I think they're deep. They got a lot of really young, exciting players. I don't know whether they can meet the Marlins asking price, because I don't know what the Marlins want to do with Edward Cabrera in particular. With 3 years of control, if they believe that his breakout is legit, and if he does the same thing in 2026 and you trade him away, you're looking at a possible all-star, a guy that could garner or Cy Young votes. So it's a big deal for the fan base for the Marlins, because we're at a crossroads where we say, look, this team can compete in 2026. So whatever you do in the offseason, I want to see that translate to success. No more taking steps backward, which is why that kind of trade for trade where we both help each other, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same with us. I mean, the Red Sox don't really have excuses anymore because now they made the playoffs in 2025. So they kind of have to be aggressive this offseason and make some notable moves to fill their obvious holes in the roster to make a deeper playoff push in 2026. I mean, that should be the goal. And they definitely have enough pieces to be able to feel like they can make that happen as long as they're surrounding those pieces with the right talent this offseason. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But coming up, we're going to be giving some way too early 2026 predictions that nobody actually asked for, but we're going to give anyway. PrizePicks is a great way to make decisions, but get paid for it. Being right actually can be the best thing for you because we all like being right anyway. But when you make money, I mean, that's a game changer. And make sure you don't miss any of the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. It's just a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections. For example, my guy Drake May, how many passing touchdowns he might have this weekend, you could totally pick. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with just one click. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. So going into 2026, I know everybody has expectations for their team. It's just inevitable. I mean, I have a lot of expectations for the Red Sox going into next season. Now that they have a lot of young talent that now has had exposure to the playoffs, I know how painful of a feeling it was for all of us to get eliminated by the Yankees of all teams in the playoffs. So the goal is to make sure that does not happen moving forward. And I know for you too, it sounds like the Marlins are in an interesting place because they could either continue to grow on what they have now to try to get them more in a place of contention, or they can look like they're still in a rebuild mode by adding younger pieces that they can continue to develop. So it'll be interesting to see what route they take. But when it comes to the Marlins in 2026, what's kind of your expectation about where they finish next year? Whether that's in their division or their record, like, do you see it being a successful season for them?
I do. I really do. And I think that is due in part to the expanded playoff and really the parity in the National League. Look, the Dodgers are a great team. The best team money could buy is all I heard, but they only won 93 games. So, I mean, 93 games isn't a ton in the grand scheme of things. We see teams win 100. The Braves went from a 100-win team, or a team that was expected to win 100 games, to finishing 4th in the division. And I think they're entering kind of a new era of Braves baseball. I really don't know how good they're going to be. I think the Phillies are an aging core that, like Trey Turner, JT Realmuto, even Bryce Harper dealt with injuries. They're getting hurt. We don't even know if Kyle Schwarber's going to return. And then the Mets are the Mets. That's enough said there. The Nationals,
Yeah.
they're in a never-ending rebuild. Their rebuild failed when they traded Juan Soto because James Wood and Mackenzie Gore, that doesn't work out for them. So this is the opportunity for the Marlins to really make a run at this thing. There's 3 wild card spots plus the division. I'm not going to go as far as to say they're going to win the division. I think that's a little too far. But I do expect this team to be in contention for a wild card berth. And if they don't make the wild card, if they take a step backward, I'm going to view that as a disappointment, because you go from 2024 to 2025, 62 wins to 79 wins, from being in contention to the very last week of the season. Mathematically, what's the encore going to be in 2026? Can you get to 85, 86 wins? I think they can. It's going to take health. Number one, something the Marlins have dealt with for years is just staying healthy, especially in the rotation. And then again, this offseason, like we've been talking about, Gabby, will they make additions? Will they supplement the young core? Kyle Stowers and Augustine Ramirez, they can't do it all on their own. So guys have got to keep up with the same level of production that they've shown. Kyle Stowers playing at an MVP all-star level, and then supplement that young core with existing veterans if they do those things. And they're serious about competing, and they spend some money. That's the other big thing. Then I think this team can be competitive.
Yeah, spending money. You're preaching to the choir on that, because the Red Sox have, for whatever reason, over the last few years, decided that they are not a big market team anymore, and that they just didn't really feel like spending money. And then finally, last off season was when I think they finally heard everybody and the frustrations, and they were like, all right, we have to spend some money. So they went out and got Alex Bregman, which was great, but he's now opting out. So they don't even know if he's coming back or not. So that's
right.
the whole thing as well. They extended Garrett Crochet, which is also fantastic. So they are finally starting once again to show that they're not afraid to spend money, and that needs to continue into this offseason. I mean, the Red Sox won 89 games this year and made the playoffs. I mean, they just need to grow from that. If the Red Sox make the right moves, I think they do have a chance to win their division, because I mean, the Yankees have injuries already going into next year. Garrett Cole's not going to be ready for opening day. Supposedly, they have more pitching injuries. So there's a question mark there to begin with. Cody Bellinger is a free agent. I don't know if he's going to be coming back. The Blue Jays have quite a few free agents on their roster too. That's going to be an interesting situation for them to navigate, is what's that roster going to look like going into next year. And then, I mean, the Orioles and the Rays are just not at the point right
they're
now.
Not it. They're not it.
So the Red Sox are definitely right there. And the fact that they got into the playoffs in 2025 should be a huge confidence boost for the younger players on this team, but they just have to make the right moves and fill those holes, because their starting rotation down the stretch was very sketchy outside of Garrett Crochet. So if they can fix that and they can get a power bat, or preferably 2, that they can add to the lineup, then this is looking like a team that could make a serious push, because they definitely have the bullpen to do it, and they're a young talent that's hopefully only going to continue to get better. So that's what I'm hoping does happen. And I could see them, being a mid-90s win team if they make the right moves this offseason. Again, like you said, with the division, not going to go as far as to say this is definitely a World Series team in 2026 if they make the moves that they need to make, because it still feels like the Dodgers are a step ahead of everybody. But in the American League in general was just weaker than the National League in 2025. So there feels like there's this opening for anybody to go and try to win the pennant and be that team that comes out of the American League. So if the Red Sox take full advantage of their offseason, they can absolutely be that team. And that's definitely exciting to think about.
And I love what the Red Sox have done in terms of extending their young talent. I mean, Christian Campbell, Roman Anthony, you extended Crochet once you traded for him. He just balled out. He's going to be your ace for years to come. That is what I want the Marlins to do with their young core. we talked about free agents and trades, and that's great. That needs to happen. But also what needs to happen for the Marlins is keeping your young talent who are pre-arbitration eligible or even approaching arbitration, keep them in-house. Give them that 7-year, 8-year deal where they're taking a massive discount than they would have if they hit the open market, but it's a team-friendly deal in the long run because now you've bought out 3-4 years of arbitration and you don't feel like you have to trade them because their price tag gets too high. That's what I want the Marlins to do with Jacob Marcy, who is a rookie this season. Yuri Perez, the star pitcher, that's the key, because for me, I don't even know if he would take an extension, because we see these contracts that pitchers are getting. I mean, Yoshinobu Yamamoto hadn't even pitched an inning in the major leagues. He got a $300 million contract. It's crazy. But you have to at least talk to the agents, talk to the players, and start making offers. Because if you do, then that's a sign of commitment financially and a sign of commitment to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, people can hate on the Dodgers all they want, but they've figured out a formula for winning and for success. And if they do go back to back, there's not really an excuse for other teams not to spend money and invest in players that are going to put you in a position to win. And I think that could serve as a big wake-up call for teams. I mean, I hope it serves as a big wake-up call for the Red Sox, who can afford to pay players like that and just have chosen not to. But yeah, you bring up a good point with extending the young talent, because now they know they have these guys under wraps, and it makes it a lot easier to say we're going to continue to build around these guys because we know we have them here for years to come now. And it just helps that whole process to be a little bit more reassuring of, okay, we know we have Garrett Crochet as our number one starter now for years to come. So now we just need to continue to build the rotation around him. And it certainly is nice to have that security blanket. I mean, Roman Anthony is going to be one of the best players in baseball as long as he stays healthy. So it's nice to know that he's going to be around for a long time now too. So it's really exciting that they know, okay, we want to invest in these young players. So hopefully they don't decide to trade people midway through, like when they did with Devers. But, that's a conversation for another day, because they made the playoffs without him. The Giants didn't make the playoffs with him. So it really makes you wonder. But yeah, it should be a fun offseason to see what these teams do. And hopefully when spring training comes around, we're talking about teams that should be able to make a push in 2026, ideally.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be a fun off season. We got the winter meetings in a couple of months. It's almost like I just wish we could fast forward this podcasting journey to that, because that's going to be so exciting. I mean, I could be waking up at 2 a.m. and I see a trade notification. I got to do an emergency podcast. Everyone's like, where's the reaction? So it's going to be super fun.
No, it's so true. Yeah, nobody sleeps soundly during that time if you host a baseball podcast, that's for sure. But everybody, make sure to follow these two shows on any podcast platform, both Locked On Marlins and Locked On Red Sox. We are here Monday through Friday during the best times, during the worst times with these teams. We have your back. We have you covered with all of your coverage. Also, make sure to check out Locked On MLB with Sully, who does a fantastic job with that show. Also, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all the way up until the World Series champion is crowned. You can find that show on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So make sure that you check that out next. And I always got to end with what I always end with, which is go Red Sox.